There are seasons in life when everything seems to be working against us. Prayers remain unanswered. Doors continue to close. Dreams seem to fade away. And the silent pain within our hearts grows heavier each day. Perhaps you are in that season right now. You have tried your best. You have waited patiently. You have hoped that things would change. But instead of seeing light ahead, you seem to face even more challenges. There may be nights when you lie awake, staring into the darkness, asking yourself, will things ever get better? Does God truly hear my prayers? Does He really see what I am going through? These are honest questions, and if you have ever asked them, you are not alone. Many people before us have stood in situations that seemed impossible to overcome. They saw the sea before them and did not know where to go. They saw a vast wilderness ahead and wondered how they would continue. They faced sickness, loss, sorrow, and disappointment. Yet time and time again, God proved that He is not limited by what limits human beings. What people call impossible, God calls an opportunity to reveal His power. People see obstacles. God sees purpose. People see endings. God sees new beginnings. That is why faith is so important. Faith does not mean that we understand everything. Faith does not mean that we never experience fear. Faith is choosing to trust God even when we cannot yet see the answer. Many times, what exhausts us most is not the situation itself. It is the feeling of not knowing what is happening. We want understanding. We want to see the plan. We want to know why things are unfolding the way they are. But God rarely shows us the entire picture. Instead, He gives us enough light to take the next step, and then another step, and another. Little by little, we learn that faith is not built on seeing everything. Faith is built on knowing who is leading us. Perhaps today you can only see the struggle. Perhaps you can only see what has not happened yet. Perhaps you can only see the doors that are closing. But that does not mean God is not working. The truth is that many things are happening beyond what we can see. There are doors He is preparing to open. There are answers He is already arranging. There are miracles taking shape in the silence. And that is exactly what we will begin to explore next. Because when we cannot see what is happening, God still sees everything. And sometimes, what changes our lives is not what we see. It is what God sees on our behalf. That is where the journey continues. That is where the next chapter begins. God sees what you cannot see. One of the most difficult things about faith is trusting God when we cannot see what He is doing. We live in a world that depends on visible evidence. We want answers we can understand. We want plans we can follow. We want certainty about the future. But faith often begins where certainty ends. At the end of the previous chapter, we discovered an important truth. When we cannot see what is happening, God still sees everything. Yet, knowing that truth and living by that truth are often very different things. When life becomes difficult, our vision becomes narrow. We focus on the problem in front of us. We focus on the closed door. We focus on the delay. We focus on the disappointment. And because those things are all we can see, we begin to believe they are all that exists. But God sees beyond the moment. He sees beyond the obstacle. He sees beyond the pain. He sees beyond the waiting. He sees the entire story from beginning to end. Imagine standing in the middle of a dense forest. Tall trees surround you on every side. The path ahead is unclear. You cannot see where the trail leads. You cannot see what lies beyond the next turn. From where you stand, everything feels uncertain. But imagine looking at that same forest from high above. Suddenly, the path becomes visible. The destination becomes clear. The confusion disappears. The forest has not changed. Only the perspective has changed. This is often the difference between our perspective and God's perspective. We see from the ground. God sees from above. We see one chapter. God sees the entire book. We see today's struggle. God sees tomorrow's breakthrough. Many times, what appears to be a setback is actually divine preparation. A closed door may be protecting you from something you cannot see. A delay may be preparing you for something greater than you imagined. A season of waiting may be strengthening your faith in ways that would not be possible otherwise. The challenge is that we usually understand these things only after we have passed through them, rarely while we are in the middle of them. Perhaps that is why trust is so important. Trust allows us to move forward even when understanding is incomplete. Trust allows us to rest even when answers have not yet arrived. Trust allows us to believe that God is working behind the scenes. Right now, there may be things happening in your life that make no sense. You may be carrying questions that have remained unanswered for months or even years. You may be wondering why certain opportunities disappeared, why certain relationships ended, why certain prayers seem delayed, why certain struggles continue. The truth is that we do not always know. But not knowing does not mean God is absent. Silence does not mean abandonment. Delay does not mean denial. Waiting does not mean God has forgotten you. In fact, some of God's greatest work happens in seasons that appear quiet. Just as roots grow beneath the ground long before a tree becomes visible, God often works beneath the surface long before we recognize what He is doing. He is preparing, arranging, protecting, strengthening, guiding, even when we cannot see it. One day you may look back and realize that what felt like rejection was actually redirection. What felt like loss was actually protection. What felt like delay was actually preparation. And what felt like silence was actually God working in ways you could not yet understand. Until that day comes, faith invites us to trust. Not because we have all the answers, but because we know the one who does. The God who created the stars knows your future. The God who formed the mountains understands your struggles. The God who guides the ocean sees every detail of your life. Nothing surprises Him. Nothing confuses Him. Nothing is beyond His control. That truth brings peace. Because if God sees what I cannot see, then I do not need to fear what I cannot understand. I can trust Him. I can rest in Him. I can continue walking forward one step at a time. Yet there is another challenge many people face. Even when we begin to trust God's plan, our hearts may still carry pain. Disappointment leaves wounds. Loss leaves scars. Rejection leaves memories. And sometimes the deepest struggles are not around us. Some wounds cannot be seen. They do not appear on the surface. They leave no visible scars, yet they can affect every part of a person's life. These are the wounds of the heart. The wounds caused by loss. The wounds caused by disappointment. The wounds caused by betrayal. The wounds caused by rejection. The wounds caused by dreams that never came true. Perhaps you know these wounds well. Perhaps you have carried them for years. Perhaps you have learned how to smile while hiding your pain. Perhaps you have become so accustomed to carrying the burden that you no longer remember what it feels like to be free from it. The truth is that many people appear strong on the outside while quietly struggling on the inside. They continue moving forward. They continue fulfilling responsibilities. They continue showing up for others, yet deep within, their hearts are hurting. And often the deepest pain comes from believing that no one truly understands. But God understands. He understands every tear that has fallen in silence. He understands every disappointment. He understands every heartbreak. He understands every unanswered question. Nothing about your pain is hidden from Him. Nothing about your story surprises Him. Nothing about your wounds places you beyond His reach. Many people believe they must hide their brokenness. They fear being vulnerable. They fear admitting how much they hurt. They fear that if others see their wounds, they will be judged. But God does not ask us to hide our brokenness from Him. He invites us to bring it to Him. Not after we have fixed ourselves, not after we have become stronger, not after we have healed, but exactly as we are, broken, tired, confused, hurting, because healing begins with honesty. Healing begins when we stop pretending that everything is fine. Healing begins when we acknowledge our need for God. The beautiful thing about God's love is that He is not intimidated by broken hearts. He moves toward them. He draws near to them. He comforts them. While the world often avoids pain, God enters into it. While others may not understand your tears, God collects every one of them. While others may overlook your struggles, God sees every detail. His love reaches places that no human words can reach. There may be moments when your heart feels shattered, moments when you wonder if you will ever feel whole again, moments when the pain seems endless. Yet God specializes in restoration. He restores what appears broken. He renews what appears exhausted. He revives what appears lifeless. And He heals what seems beyond healing. Healing does not always happen instantly. Sometimes it begins quietly. A little more peace, a little more hope, a little more strength, a little more trust. Day by day, step by step, God gently rebuilds what pain has damaged. Many people pray for God to remove their pain, and sometimes He does. But often He does something even greater. He walks with us through the pain. He transforms us within the pain, and He uses the pain to draw us closer to Him. Over time, the wound that once defined us becomes part of a testimony. The struggle that once overwhelmed us becomes a source of strength. The valley that once frightened us becomes evidence of God's faithfulness. This is why we must never lose hope. Your current pain is not the end of your story. Your heartbreak is not your final chapter. Your disappointment is not your destiny. God is still writing. God is still working. God is still healing. Even now, even today, even in ways you cannot yet see. Perhaps there is a part of your heart that still needs healing. A memory you cannot forget. A loss you cannot explain. A wound you thought would never heal. Bring it to God. Do not carry it alone. Do not hide it. Do not believe the lie that healing is impossible, because the God who created your heart is also able to restore it. The God who knows every detail of your story is able to redeem every chapter. The God who sees every tear is able to bring joy again. And one day, you may discover that the very place where you felt most broken became the place where you experienced God's love most deeply. As healing begins, something remarkable happens. Fear begins to lose its power. Hope begins to grow again. Faith begins to rise. And peace slowly returns. Yet life still brings challenges. Storms still come. Difficult seasons still appear. The difference is that a healed heart learns where to turn when the storm arrives. Because healing is not the absence of future battles. Healing is the confidence that God will be with us through every battle. And that leads us to the next part of our journey. For sooner or later, every believer must learn how to stand firm when the winds begin to blow. Sooner or later, every person faces a storm. No one is exempt. No amount of wisdom can avoid every difficulty. No amount of preparation can prevent every challenge. Storms are simply part of life. Some storms arrive suddenly. A phone call changes everything. A doctor's report brings unexpected news. A relationship begins to fall apart. A financial crisis appears without warning. One moment life feels stable. The next moment everything seems uncertain. Other storms arrive slowly. They build over time. Stress accumulates. Worry increases. Disappointment grows. Little by little, the burden becomes heavier. Whether sudden or gradual, every storm presents the same question. Will we trust God when life becomes difficult? It is easy to trust when the sky is clear. It is easy to believe when everything is going well. It is easy to have faith when prayers are answered quickly. But storms reveal what lies deep within our hearts. Storms test our foundation. Storms reveal where our trust truly rests. Many people believe faith means the absence of fear, but that is not true. Faith does not mean you never feel afraid. Faith means choosing to trust God even when fear is present. Faith means taking the next step when the future is uncertain. Faith means believing God's promises, even when circumstances seem to say otherwise. Perhaps you are in a storm right now. Perhaps anxiety has been stealing your peace. Perhaps uncertainty has been keeping you awake at night. Perhaps the future feels unclear. If so, remember this: the presence of a storm does not mean the absence of God. In fact, some of the deepest encounters with God happen during life's most difficult seasons. Many times we ask God to remove the storm, and there is nothing wrong with that prayer. But sometimes God chooses to strengthen us within the storm before He calms the storm around us. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not a changed circumstance. Sometimes the greatest miracle is a changed heart, a heart that trusts more deeply, a heart that fears less, a heart that rests in God's presence, a heart that remains peaceful even when answers have not yet arrived. This kind of peace cannot be produced by human effort. It comes from knowing that God is in control, not partially in control, not occasionally in control, completely in control. Even when life feels chaotic, even when circumstances seem overwhelming, even when the future is unclear, God remains on His throne. He has not lost sight of your situation. He has not forgotten your prayers. He has not overlooked your struggles. He sees every detail. He knows every concern. And He walks with you through every moment. There is something remarkable about faith. Faith does not require us to understand everything. Faith simply asks us to trust the one who does. Imagine a child walking through a dark room while holding a loving father's hand. The child may not understand the darkness. The child may not know what lies ahead, but the child feels safe because of who is holding his hand. That is what faith looks like. Not having every answer, not seeing every detail, but trusting the one who leads us. Storms often teach lessons that comfort never could. They teach dependence. They teach perseverance. They teach patience. They teach trust. Most importantly, they teach us that God is enough. When everything else is shaken, God's faithfulness remains. When people disappoint us, God remains faithful. When circumstances change, God remains faithful. When plans fall apart, God remains faithful. His character never changes. His promises never fail. His love never ends. Perhaps today you feel exhausted from fighting your storm. Perhaps you are tired of carrying the burden. Perhaps you feel like giving up. If that is where you are, hear this truth. You do not have to carry the storm alone. God never intended for you to. He invites you to place your worries in His hands. He invites you to release your fears. He invites you to trust Him with what you cannot control. And when you do, something beautiful begins to happen. Peace slowly replaces anxiety. Hope begins to rise again. Strength returns. Faith grows. Not because the storm has ended, but because you have discovered that God is with you in the middle of it. One day, this storm will pass. One day, you will look back and see how far God has brought you. One day, you will realize that what felt impossible became a testimony of His faithfulness. Until then, keep walking, keep trusting, keep believing. Not because the storm is small, but because your God is greater. And as faith grows in the storm, something else begins to happen. The wounds left by fear, the scars left by disappointment, the exhaustion left by years. After every storm, there are traces left behind. Sometimes the storm leaves visible damage. Sometimes it leaves wounds that no one else can see. Years of disappointment can leave scars on the heart. Seasons of anxiety can drain the soul. Long periods of waiting can create weariness deep within us. Even when the storm begins to pass, many people continue carrying the pain it left behind. That is why healing is so important. Not merely surviving the storm, but allowing God to restore what the storm has damaged. Many people think of healing only in physical terms, but some of the deepest wounds are not found in the body. They are found in the heart. A heart wounded by rejection. A heart wounded by betrayal. A heart wounded by failure. A heart wounded by fear. A heart wounded by years of carrying burdens alone. These wounds may not be visible to others, yet they affect the way we think, the way we trust, the way we love, the way we see ourselves, and often the way we see God. The beautiful truth is that God cares about every wound. Nothing is too small. Nothing is too deep. Nothing is beyond His ability to heal. God never asks us to pretend that we are not hurting. He never asks us to ignore our pain. Instead, He invites us to bring our pain to Him, to bring our fears, our disappointments, our regrets, our questions, our broken pieces, and place them in His hands. Healing often begins with surrender. The moment we stop trying to carry everything ourselves, the moment we stop pretending to be strong, the moment we admit that we need God, there is great freedom in that moment. Because God never intended for us to carry life's burdens alone. He offers His strength when ours is gone. He offers His peace when our minds are troubled. He offers His hope when our future seems uncertain. And He offers His healing when our hearts are wounded. Sometimes healing happens suddenly. A breakthrough arrives. A burden lifts. A prayer is answered. But often healing is a journey, a slow and beautiful process of restoration, day by day, step by step. God rebuilds what pain tried to destroy. He restores confidence where fear once lived. He restores joy where sorrow once ruled. He restores hope where despair once settled. He restores peace where anxiety once dominated. And little by little, the heart begins to breathe again. Many people become discouraged because healing takes time. They expect immediate transformation. They expect all pain to disappear overnight. But healing is not always measured by speed. Healing is measured by progress. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not instant change. Sometimes the greatest miracle is discovering that you are stronger today than you were yesterday. That you have more peace than before, more hope than before, more trust than before. That is healing. God often works quietly, like the sunrise slowly overcoming the darkness, like a seed growing beneath the soil, like a river patiently shaping stone. His work may seem invisible at first, but over time, its impact becomes undeniable. One day you realize that the wound no longer controls you. The fear no longer dominates you. The disappointment no longer defines you. You are no longer living from your pain. You are living from God's grace. This is what restoration looks like. Not pretending the past never happened, but allowing God to transform the past into something meaningful. The scars may remain, but they no longer represent defeat. They become reminders of God's faithfulness, evidence that He carried you through. Proof that His grace was enough. Perhaps today there is still a part of your heart that needs healing, a burden you have carried for too long, a memory that still hurts, a fear that still lingers, a disappointment you cannot seem to release. Give it to God. Not tomorrow, not someday. Today, let Him begin the work of restoration. Let Him speak peace into your anxiety. Let Him speak hope into your discouragement. Let Him speak strength into your weakness. Because when God speaks, healing begins. Not because every problem instantly disappears, but because His presence enters the pain, and wherever His presence enters, transformation follows. As healing grows, something else begins to develop. A deeper trust, a stronger faith, a greater confidence in God's timing. You begin to realize that even when the answer has not arrived, God is still faithful. Even when the miracle has not appeared, God is still working. Even when the road ahead remains uncertain, God can still be trusted. And this brings us to the next stage of the journey, for healing teaches us how to trust. But trust becomes most powerful when we continue believing before the miracle arrives. That is where faith matures. That is where hope deepens. That is where we discover one of the greatest lessons in the Christian life: the miracle of trusting God. One of the greatest challenges in life is trusting God when nothing seems to be changing. It is easy to trust when prayers are answered quickly. It is easy to trust when blessings arrive. It is easy to trust when miracles are visible. But what about the days when heaven seems silent? What about the seasons when the answer has not yet come? What about the moments when you continue praying, yet everything appears exactly the same? This is where faith becomes real, not when the miracle arrives, but while we are waiting for it. Many people believe that faith is proven after the breakthrough, yet true faith is often revealed before the breakthrough appears. Faith continues believing when there is no visible evidence. Faith continues hoping when circumstances remain difficult. Faith continues trusting when understanding is limited. Anyone can celebrate after the victory. Faith learns to worship before the victory. Anyone can trust after the answer arrives. Faith learns to trust before the answer appears. That is why waiting can be one of the most powerful classrooms in the Christian life. Waiting teaches patience. Waiting teaches humility. Waiting teaches surrender. Waiting teaches dependence upon God. Most importantly, waiting teaches trust. And trust is often where miracles begin. Many people spend their lives trying to control everything. They want certainty. They want guarantees. They want to know exactly how everything will unfold. But God rarely reveals every detail. Instead, He invites us into a relationship of trust, a relationship where we walk by faith rather than by sight, a relationship where we learn to depend upon His wisdom rather than our own understanding. This can feel uncomfortable, especially when the future is unclear, especially when the burden feels heavy, especially when the outcome matters deeply to us. Yet it is in those moments that trust becomes most valuable. Trust says, even if I do not understand, I will continue believing. Even if I cannot see the answer, I will continue hoping. Even if the road ahead is uncertain, I will continue following God. Trust does not eliminate questions. Trust simply refuses to let questions become greater than faith. Perhaps today you are carrying a prayer that has remained unanswered for a long time. Perhaps you are waiting for healing, waiting for restoration, waiting for provision, waiting for direction, waiting for a breakthrough. If so, remember this: a delayed answer is not proof of God's absence. A delayed answer is not proof of God's rejection. A delayed answer is not proof that God has forgotten you. Sometimes God works slowly because He is preparing something greater than we can imagine. Sometimes He is preparing the blessing. Sometimes He is preparing us. And often, He is doing both. Looking back, many people discover that what seemed like a delay was actually protection. What seemed like silence was actually preparation. What seemed like a closed door was actually guidance. At the time, they could not see it, but later, they understood. This is why trust matters. Trust allows us to keep moving forward until understanding arrives. Trust allows us to remain hopeful when circumstances are unclear. Trust allows us to rest in God's promises, even when emotions fluctuate. There is a quiet miracle that happens when we trust God. Our anxiety begins to lose its grip. Our fear begins to weaken. Our hearts begin to rest. Not because every problem has disappeared, but because we are no longer carrying the burden alone. God carries what we cannot carry. He sees what we cannot see. He knows what we do not know, and He is working in ways we cannot yet understand. One day you may look back on this season and realize that God was faithful every step of the way. You may discover that He protected you from things you never saw. You may discover that He provided strength when you thought you had none left. You may discover that He answered prayers in ways far greater than you expected. And you may realize that the waiting itself became a blessing because it brought you closer to Him. Perhaps that is the greatest miracle of trust. not merely receiving what we asked for, but learning to know God more deeply through the process, learning that His presence is enough, learning that His faithfulness never changes, learning that His love remains constant through every season. As trust grows, faith becomes stronger. As faith becomes stronger, hope becomes deeper. As hope becomes deeper, peace becomes more secure. And eventually, something beautiful begins to happen. We stop focusing only on the miracle we are waiting for, and we begin focusing on the God who performs miracles. That change transforms everything. Because our confidence is no longer built upon circumstances, our confidence is built upon God's character, and His character never changes. His promises remain true. His love remains faithful. His power remains unlimited, which brings us to the final chapter of our journey. For after healing, after hope, after peace, after learning to trust, we arrive at one life-changing truth. The truth that has been guiding us from the very beginning. The truth that changes fear into faith. The truth that changes impossibility into possibility. The truth that reminds us that no situation is beyond God's power. And that truth is this: when God speaks, nothing is impossible.